Hello, pre-calculus kids. This is day 3 of Unit 7 for the flipped classroom. Today, instead of teaching you something new, I'm going to be doing a video solution to what we had in classwork. Remember, this worksheet is what you should work on or complete for homework tonight if you did not complete it in class. So please complete this worksheet and then check these video solutions. So what we had was I think, 10 problems. 12 problems on simplifying trig ratios. And in class today, what we talked about was how we switch things to sines and cosines, and that helps us to simplify expressions. So in the first one, I'm going to switch to sine of A, 1 over sine of A. We have cosine of A, we're the keeping, and then sine of A over cosine of A. So because these are all being multiplied, terms cancel, and we're left with 1. The next one, we have cosine of x. We have 1 over the sine of x. We switch to sines and cosines. The final answer would be cosine of x over the sine of x. And if they do ask to convert this to one trig expression, you would then finish it up by using the quotient identity, calling that cotangent of x. On number 3, it's kind of like the first one, just the terms are rearranged. This is probably more of a typo than anything, but we'll do it. We'll rewrite sines and cosines. Tangent is sine over cosine. We have 1 over sine of x for cosecant. Cancels. We're left with 1. Same thing with this one. Tangent goes to sine over cosine. Cosine of x over sine of x. Cosine of x. And these will cancel with those, and we're just left with cosine of x. Another point to mention is when you have a trig ratio multiplied by its reciprocal, it equals 1 as well. So that's just a quick tip. Here we have a little bit of foiling of trig relationships. So first times first is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Then we have the outer. The outer is going to be plus sine of x. The inner is going to be minus sine of x. And the last times the last will be minus sine squared of x. Now when you simplify this, you get 1 minus sine squared of x. And this is actually, you can convert this to one trig ratio because if you remember, sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x equals 1. That can be rewritten as cosine squared of x equals 1 minus sine square root of x, and you guessed it, you can replace that whole quantity with just plain old cosine squared of x. So that would be what you'd want to finally simplify that to be. This next one is cosecant squared of b. First times first, the outer and the inner are going to be cosecant of beta minus cosecant of beta, or b, sorry, minus 1. It ends up being cosecant squared of beta minus 1 is what you simplify it down to be. Now, if you look at your trig ratios, you have a ratio that says cotangent squared of x, 1 plus that equals cosecant squared of x. So this is clearly an example where we've used this identity we move the 1 over. So cotangent squared of x equals cosecant squared of x minus 1, and that's a direct replacement with this identity. So that could also be cotangent squared of x. Next one, we have tangent squared of x minus secant squared of x, and this would be done by replacing tangent squared of x with sine squared over cosine squared of x. Secant squared would be converted to cosine squared of x in the bottom. Because we have the same denominators, we can add the fractions. Sine squared of x minus 1 over cosine squared of x. And using your identities, I'm going to just write it in red. The first Pythagorean one says the sine squared plus the cosine squared equals 1. If you rewrite that as sine squared minus 1, because you subtract this 1 over, that equals, by subtracting cosine to the other side, you get negative cosine squared. So you can replace the top with negative cosine squared of x, and the bottom, since it's cosine squared of x, this results in a -1 for the value. Next one, we just replace the top is going to be 1 over sine of x. The bottom is cosine of x over sine of x. And remember what we talked about in class today, denominators can cancel with denominators. And you're left with 1 over cosine of x. So I'm just going to check that because I always like to check using when you divide by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal. So here we're dividing by cosine of x over sine of x. Now I'm going to change this to multiplying by the reciprocal. And then what you see is they cancel and we're left with 1 over cosine of x. Hopefully that helps. Let's move on. Number 9. This is just leave sine alone, leave cosine alone. Change this to cosine in the bottom. Change this to cosine over sine using your reciprocal identities. That cancels with that, that cancels with that, and we're left with just 1 cosine ratio. Next one, we have sine of x over cosine of x, and I would change this to sine of x over cosine of x. What do you see happens? Oh, because we're multiplying, the numerator and denominator in the bottom cancel, and we end up having sine over sine, which will equal 1. Last one, second to last one. Let me change the ink color just so we can distinguish between problems. We have cosine of x, and this is sine of x over cosine of x using reciprocal identity, or quotient identity, my bad. And then we have sine of x, and this is cosine of x over sine of x. That cancels that. That cancels that. We end up with just sine of x plus the cosine of x. Last but not least, we have sine squared of x over, this is replaced by cosine squared of x using the first Pythagorean identity. And this would result in, if you wanted to simplify it to one identity, this would just be tangent squared of x. I hope this video has helped you understand how to work through the problems that we worked through. If you have any questions, please let me know tomorrow in class. And there's no lesson for new material tonight. We're going to be working on more trig and factoring problems tomorrow. Hope you're doing well and look forward to hearing your comments tomorrow in class.